Hi, this is Kate Olson, and we're here on the Embrace Change Radio website, and we're about to do a soul talk. And my guest that I'm going to be doing the soul talk with is Edie Weinstein. And if this is your first time listening, I'm Kate Olson, and I'm a hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner, a life coach, a Reiki master, and just sort of I like to call myself a change adventure navigator because I love helping and guiding people to find their path, purpose, and peace. So I'd like to let Edie introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her before we get started with our talk, which is going to be about, how do we communicate during this social distancing and everything that's gone on with the pandemic. So, hi, Edie.
Hi, thank you, Kate, for having me on. Just like you, I'm a Renaissance woman. I'm a licensed social worker in a group practice right now. So I see clients from my home on telehealth, which is one way we communicate. I'm also an interfaith minister ordained in 1999, so I've been at it for a while. I'm a journalist since 1988. What else? An editor. I'm editing a book right now, actually, on relationships. I'm a Reiki master, and I call myself an optimistic, OPTIMYST-MYSTIC. And that came to me about 2 or 3 years ago in a dream. And the voice said, you're not just an optimist, you're an optimistic who sees the world through the eyes of possibility. So that's what I'm doing these days, is seeing the world through the eyes of love rather than fear, which is so easy to do right now, to get caught up in that fear. So that's who I am, and I'm here on a beautiful, sunny Pennsylvania day, and it's gorgeous outside, and it's hard to imagine that there are people all over the world right now who are not experiencing this beautiful sunny day, who are ill, who have loved ones who are ill, who have loved ones who have died or are in the process of dying. We're in the midst of, in this country, I don't know wherever people are watching, but in America, in the midst of all kinds of riots and demonstrations in the face of horrific violence against African-American, not just African-American, but people of color in our country. So I'm grateful that I can sit in this, I won't call it a bubble, but this peaceful center at the moment, so I can go back out into the world and do my part to make this a more peaceful place everywhere.
Yes, there's more going on than, I can't even think of another time when there was, as much out of the normal going on as there is now. Mm-hmm. It's just surreal, really. It's beyond anything I ever would have imagined. Mm-hmm. However, we still have a strong, need and desire to connect with one another. And I've actually had people, because I do a lot of these Zooms for my show and for this and for other things, tell me how hard it is for them to express themselves in this way because, they can't really look into someone's eyes, or, it's not the same as being in person. It's a wonderful technology. I'm glad we have it. What would we be doing if we didn't? But still, it doesn't give you that same, feedback as being in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I've found is that because we're limited, and I don't even call it social distancing because we're not socially distant, we're physically distant, but in the midst of this, and we're going on week 11 for me now that I've been in quarantine. The only time I go out is to go to the supermarket, the pharmacy, occasionally drop by my office to do some paperwork, and on rare occasions go to visit my family, my son and daughter-in-law, and I have a 4-month-old grandson, and rarely friends from a distance wearing masks. And at first, 11 weeks ago, I thought, ooh, okay, this is scary. This is, you use the word surrealistic. It still is all these weeks later. And I thought, how am I, a socially active, tactile person, going to manage being in total isolation? I live alone. I have wonderful friends and family, and like you, I'm grateful for this technology that enables me to be in touch with them. And if this is what we've got for right now, I embrace that too. But I thought, how will I go without human physical contact for this period of time and for who knows how much longer? And then I realized that there are people who are isolated in their lives anyway, to the point that they don't see or talk to or touch another human being, sometimes for decades, if you can imagine that. So I focus on the gratitude for what I do have rather than the fear of what I don't have. But a few months ago, I thought, oh yeah, 2 weeks quarantine, everybody will be back out in the world. We're not. At least we're not in safe ways for most people. I do understand if people have to go out to work. I'm blessed that I get to work from home using telehealth technology to talk to my clients. I'm grateful that I'm a journalist and I can, type from home. But there are friends and family members, some that I know well, that are out there working, coming in contact with people. And my prayers every day are for their safety. So that's part of what I'm going through here.
Yeah. And I have noticed that we are a lot more expressive than we think, like with masks on. I noticed that you can still tell when somebody smiles.
Right.
You can see it in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're a lot more expressive
Mm-hmm.
than we sometimes think.
Right. And I've learned through all this that humans are tremendously adaptive creatures. That in the beginning, when I first started wearing a mask, I thought, how will they know that I'm smiling? And the first time I was in a supermarket with a mask on, there was a man, again, appropriately distanced from me, and we were having a conversation. I said, isn't this weird that you can't see if somebody's smiling? And I said, yeah, you can still smile with your eyes. So I do that too. And you can call them eye hugs. A friend of mine years ago used to say that I gave great eye hugs. So you can do that. You can see, I can see you, except I don't have my glasses on. So, but I know you're there. So I can do an eye hug that way too. We can express ourselves with our voices. We can talk to people. One of the things that I do is free hugs. I'm one of those people that stands on a street corner with a sign that says free hugs. And I haven't been able to do that since, I think March was the last time I did it, like early March. Maybe it was even around, maybe February, like around Valentine's Day. And about a month or so ago, I went out into my little town, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, with my sign, wearing my mask, and then offering air hugs to people. And most people said, everybody said yes to that. Nobody said no to an air hug.
Yeah.
So I do virtual hugs now, and I'm on Zoom calls a lot too, some for fun and some for work. And I make sure that I make eye contact with the people that I'm talking to. And because we are still in need of that reminder that we're fully human, that we need each other.
Well, it's a virtual eye contact, though. I mean, we're not really making eye contact. We're just looking at the picture of each other's eyes.
So how can we personalize it more, since this is what we've got right now? A question that I would throw out is, how do we make it more, more personal?
Well, I did watch a video that a woman who trains speakers did, and she was giving some tips exactly for doing that. And one, she suggested, I'm not going to do it now because you wouldn't be able to see me, but she suggested that we stand when we do the Zooms because you're able to use more body language that way. And that comes across. And she said, when you start out your video or end it, to use your hands, you know, to say hello or hello. And,
Right.
you know, yeah, to, you know, wave at people or, you know, to.
Yeah. Well, when I've been on Zoom calls where people are speaking, like some of the interfaith communities that I'm part of have speakers, and when they're finished, we do like what do they call, like twinkle fingers or twinkle hands, like woo, like that, blowing kisses, doing this kind of thing. That way, we're not just animated talking heads; that we really are coming from the heart. Because I think the other thing that this is teaching me, and from other people I've heard as well, is to find new ways to show love. One of the things that I've come to realize is that even though we can't hug, we can still love. And if you're limited to electronic, technological contact with people, then you make the most of it. You do the best you can. And the way that I'm talking to you right now is pretty much the way I talk to most people. Like when I'm working with my clients, this is how I do it. And one of the things that I love about the technology when I'm working with clients is that it enables me to get a glimpse into their lives. I can see where they live. They show me if they have pets, they'll bring the pets into the room and they'll, oh, look, here's my cat, here's my dog. Or their children will wander in during a session. So I get a bigger picture of what their lives are like beyond what they've told me in my office. And when I do interviews like with you, I get to see the beauty of your room that that you're in. And you get to see the, I don't know if you can see in there, the Buddha.
Yes, I see.
This was a print that my son gave me 5 or 6 years ago, and it's the center focal point of my living room. And when I look at that, I feel very calm, very peaceful. And,
Yes. Yeah, that is something she brought up. It's and I know it's true from what what I do in my work is not right now because I'm selling my house, but when I had my office downstairs before, I tried to create a very calm environment, and I am a person who emits that kind of calmness when I'm talking to people, and warmth generally, and coming across authentically with those types of calmness, warmth. That is something that right now people are seeking out.
And I think the way that we can project ourselves, even on screen, provides that sense of security, because people are scared. I get scared. I wake up every morning going, okay, take a deep breath. It's okay. Look around. You're safe. You're healthy. People in your life are healthy. I have one friend who is now recovering from the virus. He was sick for a good few months and was not able to even get tested for it until a week or so ago. But he's the only one, knock wood, in my immediate circles that has it or had it. So I say, okay, your family and friends are safe. You're safe. You've got your job. You've got income. You got your car. You got your computer. You're okay. You've got work that you love to do. You can make a difference in people's lives. And then I calm down. And then when the butterflies kick in during the day, I'll say to myself, okay, let's do a check-in. You still got all these things going for you. Every day that goes by is one day closer to getting back out there in the world and interacting with people in ways that you were accustomed to before. The term new normal really makes me cringe, because when I think about that, that means, okay, we better get used to not touching each other. I'm not going to go for that. We better get used to talking to each other through masks. I say it's the temporary normal. It's not forever.
Yeah. What you're doing, though, that is what people need to do, is focus on the positives rather than the negatives. Like, I had a client who he was struggling with depression, and he told me that every morning he would lay in bed and think about all of the regrets that he had for his whole life. And he said sometimes he would just feel so tired that he couldn't even get out of bed. And I said, well, what if you stopped doing that? And he just looked at me like, how is that even possible? And we talked about it a little more, and decided that he would make a conscious effort to, instead of thinking about those regrets from the past, he would think about the good things that he planned to do that day.
Right.
And it worked. And people don't realize sometimes it's that simple to.
Right. Oh, yeah, it is. And for me, it's rinse and repeat, because it's not just a one and done thing.
No.
Throughout the day, when I have these butterflies in my stomach, I think, okay, let's focus. It's okay to have those feelings. It makes perfect sense. And as somebody who's an empath, I tend to be like a sponge, and I soak up energy. So when I'm working with clients, I have to remind myself this is their issue, and you can best serve them by not taking on their feelings. I tend to pick up the energy of what goes on in the world too. So I have to remind myself I'm safe, I'm healthy, all is well, no matter what it feels like. Before I go to bed at night, I do another ritual. I've always said prayers, even from the time I was a little kid, but I'll say my regular prayers, and then I'll say I'm grateful that everybody in my circles, are healthy and safe, and please, protect and bless all those that I know and love, all those that they know and love, all those that they have known and love, and so on until it encompasses the entire planet. And then I visualize a healing temple. And I said, everybody who wants to step into this temple to protect them, their health and safety, or to, if they're not feeling well, to help heal, come on in. And it seems to grow exponentially. So we're never going to run out of room in the healing temple. And I wake up in the morning, usually feeling refreshed. I have had I have bizarre dreams anyway, but definitely dreams about what's going on in the world. Like last night, I dreamed that I was on a bus going to New York City with a friend, and nobody was wearing a mask. And I went, okay, why aren't these people wearing masks? Why aren't I wearing a mask? So I reached in my purse and I put the mask on. And I don't know whether they weren't wearing masks because they didn't need to anymore, or because that was my fear that I would wind up someplace where I was taking a tremendous risk. But I've had a lot of directly COVID-related dreams. The very first week that this was going on, the quarantine was going on, I dreamed I was in China. I've never been to China. I've had no interest in going, but I was at this grand celebration, and there was a man speaking what I thought was Mandarin. I don't know it either, but I just had the sense that it was. And so I couldn't understand what he was saying, but it was a celebratory experience. Nobody was wearing masks. Nobody was sick. So I thought, all right, is this reassurance that eventually it's going to get better? And then a funny dream I had was a dream we were able to hug again, but not full frontal hugs. We were only able to hug back to back, like kind of like that, or front to back, like spooning. But we weren't able to hug face to face yet. And I said, all right, I'll settle for that for right now. Because really, the truth is, hugs spread far fewer germs than handshakes do.
Yeah, that's probably true. Well, you're not the only one who has those dreams.
So you had them too?
Well, I don't remember a lot of them, but occasionally I'll remember one. And a few years ago, I went to Japan, and their trains are really crowded. They're just, unbelievably crowded. And I had a dream that I was in Japan, and I was on one of those trains, and I was trying to social distance. Or
good luck.
Physical distance, yes, and it was just impossible. And I don't speak Japanese, and it was just horrible. And then I woke up.
Well, in every dream that I've had, and there are at least a half a dozen that I remember, I was able to overcome the fear. There was one dream where I was in the car with my mother, who died in 2010. She was driving my car, and I looked to the right, and there was this big tornado spinning next to us, and it was following us. I said, Mom, you better drive home to my house now. So we got into the house, and I said, okay, we need to go huddle in the bathtub, because the bathroom is the innermost room in my house. There are no windows, but there's a skylight in my hallway. And I looked up through the skylight, and the tornado was right over the house. So I took a deep breath, and I blew it away. I went, I blew the tornado away. So that felt like an empowering dream. I've had other dreams where I've gotten lost, or I couldn't find my backpack or my purse, or couldn't find my car. So there is a sense of feeling lost in the midst of this. I've also developed what I've heard called quarantine brain. I don't know if you've experienced that, where you get confused easily, where you forget stuff, your executive functioning goes offline, decision making, concentration, all of those things go out the window. And part of that, again, is the expectation of what we're going through right now, that we are expected to do what we always did. If we're working, do our jobs. If we're home with our kids, we're schooling our kids. If we have to go out to work, we're concerned about our safety there. We're concerned about the state of the world in general. So it's no wonder that it's taking its toll on our brains. And the other thing is, there's a tremendous increase in depression and anxiety among people for all kinds of reasons, whether they have their job, whether they're afraid of losing their job, whether they've lost loved ones or are afraid of that, whether they're afraid of getting sick. I officiated at my first funeral since this started back on May 9th. And it was for a gentleman that died of a stroke. It wasn't COVID related at all. And his wife had asked me, would I be willing to officiate outside in a cemetery, very few people, all of us wearing masks, and I did. And it was a really cold day in Pennsylvania on May 9th. It was like in the 40s maybe, and it was gusty winds. And I remember standing in the tent where the grave was, and the tombstone was, and it was open on 3 sides, but I was leaning up against the one side where the tent was, the wall was, and I could feel it was like it was breathing. It was like the tent wall was breathing. And I said, okay, I can lean back for a little bit. I wasn't speaking at the time, somebody else, man's son, was speaking at the time, and I leaned back against it, and I thought, okay, God's got my back. Now, I don't tell anybody what to believe spiritually. I believe it's an inside job, whatever you believe. But I tell people, if you have a spiritual practice, use it, whether it's a ritual, prayer, meditation, being out in nature, using mala beads, whatever it is, trust that, lean on that. So that's part of what's got me through here too. I question all the time. I have what I call Godversations, where I say, okay, what's going on here? Can you give me some answers? Because I am stumped. How can I be of support to other people when I feel like I'm falling apart sometimes? And the message that I got is, be fully human. Cry if you need to, reach out to people if you need to, because I tend to be a caregiver, the rock on which everybody leans. And that's something that I learned from my mother. And I used to tell her, you know what, Mom, rocks crumble. And I've learned that I need to allow myself to be supported too. A couple weeks into this ordeal, I called my son and daughter-in-law, and I said, I'm usually the one that's takes care of everybody else, and the roles are now reversed. I said, I really need to talk to you or see pictures or something of the baby every day if you can, because it's like an emotional lifeline. And because I had been there 2 to 3 times a week for the first month and a half of his life, helping to take care of him. And my daughter-in-law's parents were there the other days. And I said, I really miss you guys. So we FaceTime. It's not every day, it's every other day. My daughter-in-law and my son will send videos of the baby or pictures. And I do a video for him every morning where I'm either singing to him or doing nursery rhymes. So that's a connection too. But it was hard for me to admit that I was scared. And my daughter-in-law said, call anytime. And I thought, whoa, that feels good. Because I don't want to feel helpless. But sometimes I do.
it's hard when you're out in public with the divide that we have
Mhm.
with people, like, okay, when I go out, I'm wearing a mask and
Mhm.
a lot of times gloves, and I'm physically distancing from
Mhm.
people. But
Yeah.
then there's a lot of people that they have no mask and they don't pay attention to the physical distancing.
Mhm.
And, I have a hard time dealing with that.
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately, mask or no mask has become politicized, and it really shouldn't be. Um, I wear a seatbelt. I adhere to the speed limit. What else? I don't steal. It's against the law to steal. What else? If I walk into a restaurant, I haven't walked into a restaurant in 11 weeks either, but if a sign says no shirt, no shoes, no service, I respect that. I don't get all up in arms about it. And to me, it's an act of love to wear a mask. Is it going to prevent COVID? I don't know, but at
Well,
least it's going to keep me from sneezing and coughing on somebody, or them sneezing or
if
coughing on
I'm standing in line and somebody's coming up too close to
me.
me,
Mhm.
I feel like they're disrespecting my space. They're
Mhm.
disrespecting my health.
Right. Right.
And, it in our environment, I don't know how to deal with that really. A lot of times I'll just turn around and look at them and, hope that they get the point.
Mhm.
Um, but I haven't had it happen to me, but
Mhm.
I have heard of other people who have actually been like taunted or had rude comments made to them
Mhm.
for wearing a mask.
Mhm. Yeah, I haven't either. Let me take a sip of water here. The places that I go have lines on the floor.
Hmm.
They, excuse me, they have lines on the floor. The supermarket where I shop only lets a few people in the aisle to, go into a checkout line. You have to wait to get called. And they, at one point at least, were checking for masks and had a clicker, and they wouldn't let more than 50 people in the store at a time, in addition to the employees. And for me, again, it's common sense and safety. I wouldn't get up close and personal with somebody in a supermarket unless I knew them anyway. I wouldn't stand right up against them and get in their faces. What concerns me is the number of people that are in large gatherings that are, like on the beaches, or what was it, in the Ozarks, all those people in the pool. How many of them are going to test positive? At big, any kind of gatherings, family parties where people are too close together. How many people are going to test positive? I have a friend who's a therapist in New Jersey who's lost at least 4 family members. And when all this was starting, they were in the news a lot, for the number of family members. I think there were 9 of them hospitalized, and I think a few of them, at least one that I know, has come home, but I know several that have died. And they were all at a family birthday party. She wasn't there, fortunately, but they were all at this family birthday party before the quarantine happened. This was right in the very beginning, like maybe March. And I think, am I willing, to take that kind of risk and jeopardize people's safety? And I'm not. I'm not hiding out of fear. Although again, there are times when I feel scared, but I'm not hiding in my little, cubby hole here out of fear, like, this terrible thing. I'm in a high risk group. I'm 61 years old. I've had a heart attack. I've had 2 years ago, I had pneumonia. So I have some idea of what the symptoms might feel like, and I don't want to feel them again. I was in the hospital in February, I think. I had kidney stones that caused E. coli infection, and I don't want to go through that again. So I'm taking, safeguarding myself as well as other people.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I know a woman who her mother and her uncle both passed just recently of the virus.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it is hard to see that kind of loss occur. The one thing that I didn't mention about the funeral was that when it was all over, I knew that the widow was going to go home alone. Nobody was going home with her, and she knew that. And I had told her initially, I said, as much as I would like to hug you, I can't. And she said, I understand. When this is all over, then we'll hug. When we can, we'll hug again. And I don't want to feel like I'm living in fear, because we all die. I know that everybody is on loan to us, but I don't want to speed up the process for me or for anybody else. And it's so hard now, because this is the time when we most need each other. We most need hugs. We most need physical comfort. And instead of it being a healing balm, it's something that could kill someone. And that makes no sense to me from a
Yes,
spiritual perspective.
with it being asymptomatic or possible
Mm-hmm.
to be asymptomatic,
Right.
it's a big concern. How would you feel if you passed it on to someone else?
Right. Right. Yeah,
Because
I think about that a lot. Again, particularly as a grandmother, I don't want to do anything. Like when I go over there and visit, we sit way apart. I haven't been in their house in 11 weeks. And, I don't know at what point that's going to become safe. I'm really not sure. I have like I said, I have no symptoms of the disease at all. And I would know if I did, because I'm sensitive to respiratory conditions. But who knows? I don't want to take that risk. So I'm grateful for the life that I have now. I'm grateful for the opportunity to still be able to be a communicator, even from a distance. I'm planning a lot of things for when this is over, but I know that this is my now. This is my now normal. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Instead of new normal, this is my now normal. Back when it first started, I thought, I wish I could just sleep my way through it and wake up and it would be all over. And then I said, no, I don't want to waste a day. I'm still living. I still have things I want to do, and I better start seed planting for them now. So I'm starting to teach classes online. I'm editing a book that we're hoping to get out by the end of the year. Still writing articles and I'm doing this, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to your listeners and viewers. So I'm still living fully,
yes,
except for
you do have to do what you can do now.
right.
And I have had, even by my son, I've had the fear expressed that this might go on forever, and
Mhm.
a feeling that it's not going to change, it's not going to end. And while I can't say for sure what's going to happen, I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that things will change.
Well, that's a guarantee. Things always change.
Yes.
But I think about the plagues and the pandemics in the past, that people have recovered. People recovered from smallpox. They've recovered from measles. They've recovered from all different kinds of viruses. There are people now that were diagnosed HIV positive back in the 80s that are still living. So I don't, my spidey sense tells me that, yeah, it's going to be like this for a while longer, but there is going to come a time when we're going to be able to safely interact with each other. And I'm doing everything I can to help create that kind of world. I mean, one of the things that I'm thrilled with, but it's like a bittersweet experience, is how nature is rejuvenating itself. The waters are clear, the skies are cleaner. There are birds and animals coming out now that weren't out before. And I don't know that we as human beings have learned the lesson that it's, in part our responsibility to help make sure that that continues. But once people start flying a lot more, it's going to happen. Once people start driving a lot more, it's going to happen. That things will go back to the way they were. And I pray that there'll be enough people that will wake up to the idea that we have to be stewards for the earth. That the planet doesn't need us. Nature doesn't need us. We need it. So I
And
think
that
it's
it is a long-term plan. I
right.
think some
Right.
people think so
Mhm.
selfishly short-term, like,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
maybe there's going to be no planet, but I'm not going to be alive.
Right.
you know.
Yeah, you know, in various Native American cultures, they talk about the idea of planning for the next 7 generations. You know, what's it going to be like for my grandson? And if he has children, what's it going to be like for his children, and so on and so on. So I'm doing my best to create a world that I want him to grow up in, you know,
Yes,
where people love and respect each other, where they don't harm each other, where they don't, you know, they don't do damage to, you know, to the environment. We all drink the same water and breathe the same air, regardless of who we vote for, regardless of what we do, you know, you know, what we do in our daily lives. It comes down to that.
yes. That's it. It's just showing up so many important issues and values that
Mm-hmm.
we need to make decisions about.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that, I mean, it's concerning on the one hand, but um, it's a call to action on the
Mm-hmm.
other
Yeah,
hand.
absolutely. Yeah. So what's your call to action?
As I was saying in the beginning, there are just so many different things going on right now, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they're all related,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to get to the core of it,
Mm-hmm.
core of deciding, you know, what is important,
Mm-hmm.
and getting back to those values.
Right.
You know, like it's not okay to lie. Truth is important.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um, you know, what's more important, your life or your pocketbook?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
your health.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there are people that would politicize that statement too.
Yeah.
Yes, we need money to be able to support ourselves. And with the you know, quarantines being lifted in different parts of the world, I so totally understand people needing to open their businesses. And I've
Yes.
had
Yep.
friends in my community that lost their businesses in the last month or so because they had to close the doors because they couldn't afford to stay open. And yes, I understand cabin fever and the need to get out and socialize with people, but we need to do it wisely. We need to do it safely. And with the social responsibility, you know, making sure that we do it so everybody is safe. That it's not, you know, we need to think about what's the collective responsibility. That we need to think about what is it that's not only going to benefit me and my immediate circles, but the rest of the world too. Because what happens in one part of the world is going to affect the other. What happens in America is going to affect Ireland or Norway or Jamaica or any place else in the world. So there are some people I know that would call that virtue signaling. Like, all right, she's waving her, you know, her liberal flag. I don't see anything liberal about that. It's human to
Yeah.
want a safe world,
Didn't used to be
right?
that we had to pin a label on it like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Uh,
Agree.
there were values that when I grew up, my mom was a Democrat and my dad was a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of the same values.
Mm-hmm.
They came from the same small town.
Right.
They just had a little bit different view
Mm-hmm.
on how things should be done.
Right.
And I could listen to both sides of that and see their point.
Right.
That's not the case now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There aren't necessarily underlying values to those divergent views that have any commonality.
Right. Yeah.
And we need to get back to having some values.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And for me, I value, you know, a healthy planet. I value opportunities for people. I value people coming together and supporting each other. And I'm seeing some of that. I'm seeing people running errands for people. I'm seeing folks doing yard work for elderly neighbors, seeing people volunteering their time all over the place, and donating food to people who need it. So I think we're going to come out of this humble and proud of our efforts, proud of what we've done to help heal in the midst of all of this. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you about all this.
That is my hope as
Mhm.
well. So, and I thank you for coming on and talking about this, and for, being a communicator.
Thank you.
So
My pleasure.
I hope that the audience got something out of this, that it, maybe ticked on some of the boxes on what's going on in your life. And so I'm just going to say bye for now, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, thank you. Great big hug. Bye.
Bye.